Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar today around integrations. Now, today isn't showing screens or listing integrations for you. It's about what actually happens inside a service business when systems don't talk to each other. Most of the problems we see at Joblogic aren't caused by bad people or bad processes. They're caused by gaps between systems. Finance lives in one place, jobs live somewhere else, asset information is often scattered, and people fill the gaps with spreadsheets, WhatsApp messages, or memory. In the UK, especially, operational clarity and compliance are inseparable. Most businesses don't struggle to do the work, they struggle to evidence it later. When a client asks, when an auditor checks, or an incident is reviewed. Integrations aren't a nice to have anymore. They're what stop those cracks forming as a business grows. And today I'm joined by Matt Henry from Locatrix. Now, Matt is a CTO at Locatrix and spends his time right at the intersection of integrations, asset intelligence, and of course, real world operational complexity. And rather than giving Matt a slot to speak, we wanted this to be a proper conversation between the two of us. Matt sees firsthand what happens when systems don't connect, especially in complex indoor environments. And from that perspective, he fits perfectly in today's wider integration discussion. So, Matt, good morning, or should I say, rather good evening for you, and welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's nice to join you. I've been in this space in Locatrix, working in the indoor mapping world for over a decade at this point. Led the development of Plan Studio, our mapping software, and now I'm overseeing all the software development at Locatrix. And it's a fun time. There's a lot of hard technical challenges you get to deal with that are kind of unique to this space, and it's been quite fun diving in to go solve some of them,
I bet.
and many of which we're solving with other people.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and we'll get onto that a bit later with your partnerships. Um, Matt, what I just spoke about, the introduction we just made, does that description match what you're sort of currently seeing when you talk to service businesses?
Yeah, it's matching what we're seeing when we're talking to pretty much everyone. Like what our a common pattern for us is that we've started selling something to someone. So for example, if you're unfamiliar with Locatrix, we produce indoor mapping software, Plan Studio, that you can use to produce evacuation signs like this one, or ones that you might see on the back of a hotel room door, and use those maps for about a zillion other purposes, whether it's fire safety training here in Australia or elsewhere. There's quite a few other use cases we've had. But I guess wanted to flag is when someone comes to us for one of those use cases, it might we'll do a great job using indoor mapping to help them solve a problem. Let's say putting evacuation signs on the wall or training their staff, and then they'll come to us 6 months later, a year later, and go, "Could you help us with this? Could you help us understand how many of our buildings only have one or two evacuation routes? Could you help tie in some things into our asset system?" Could like they keep coming back to us afterwards. So
Yeah.
we've seen it firsthand, not just through us seeing and going, we can help people, but once people start working with us, they then turn to us and say, "Can we make this better? Can we make this better?"
Yeah, we sorry
Good.
to
It's
interrupt you.
firsthand.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. It's a really good point because obviously we see that kind of day to day. We obviously have I guess a wider field of scope when it comes to integrations with what we actually work with, and obviously partnering with great companies like yourself. It's really um, kind of positive when people you talk about integrations and you get that first it sounds like a really technical challenge, and it's of course it's going to take time, and oh my god, this is going to be expensive and complex. And when they actually go through that process, and I'd be keen to understand if you see this, it suddenly dawns on them that this isn't this big monster project that they've got to go through. And what they end up doing is saying, actually, this is really good. And they grow and they want more. And can it do this? And why can't it do this? And when can we do this? Is that kind of something you see as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been instances of people coming to us to say, "Can we help out with wayfinding and storage facilities?" So kind of beyond the usual scope of evacuation signs and fire safety to go, "Can we use the exact same floor plans, not for compliance reasons, not for any asset reasons, but to actually put a map of our kind of complicated storage facilities in front of our retail customers?"
Okay.
We've had instances of we've had instances of our floor plans that originally just created to help train staff that we can now, with no extra effort from the businesses that we're helping, we can make sure that in addition to the occupants and their staff seeing those floor plans and knowing how to get out of a building, we can be providing those floor plans to emergency services. So if you think about in the UK, there's some more recent regulations post Grenfell around providing floor plans of high-rise residential buildings to the authorities. That's
Yes.
something that all of those buildings, people managing them, worrying about them, are going, that's a new thing we have to worry about. We've got to go find the floor plans, go submit them, make sure we've done it, check we've done it. If they were locatrix customers, we can submit it for them. We've got the floor plans already. It's already been done for something. And in Australia, we're starting to share floor plans with emergency services. So it takes you from a place of solving one problem to going, oh my God, we can do so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love the emergency service. I know me and you have
Mm.
spoken before about that side of things. I love the fact that that's come into play now, and so quite rightly it should have. It's going to be a massive gain for everyone. Um, I guess if we just kind of talk a little further around this subject, when people hear integration, they often think it's an IT project, where in reality it is an operational safety net. And obviously, you brought in the emergency service side of it as well, and obviously the changes in UK post the Grenfell disaster, I guess is the correct word for it. But for, I guess for us, if we bring this sort of back into the core of the integration conversation, for us, it's with our scope, it's about removing sort of the easy things first with double handling, reducing assumptions, letting people trust data in front of them. And if we look from a perspective of a typical UK business or even Australian business, day to day, hopefully you don't see this at Locatrix internally, Matt, but accounts teams are rekeying information, schedulers are chasing updates, engineers, they're they're working around missing context. And that obviously involves where assets are poorly understood, poorly trusted, they're scattered across kind of siloed systems, and they're not mapped out correctly, which is obviously what we just touched on. But something we haven't brought into it yet either is what we find here is that compliance is almost still to this day, 2026, it's still like an afterthought rather than being part of a workflow. Um, but look, an integration doesn't magically fix everything. It doesn't. And this is something we tell our customers at Joblogic when we're talking to them about, integrations, AI, stuff like that. It doesn't fix mentality. It doesn't fix everything. It still requires um, a good work ethic, a good mentality, good work processes in place, and so on. Um, but when that friction does exist in the UK, for us, it doesn't just slow the work down, it increases that compliance risk, which, as I said a few seconds ago, is we feel isn't taken seriously enough as part of the job. It's serious because everyone knows the ramifications of it. Everyone knows about audits and checks and so on, and proof, obviously proving things. Um, but we know it quietly increases those risks, and evidence becomes fragmented, it's harder to stand by later, and so on. So I guess my question to you is, where do you see fragmentation causing the biggest day-to-day headaches, in your opinion, in your realm, I guess?
Yeah, there's a few. So to me, like the biggest headache of all is when things are fragmented, they're hard to work with. And you just the friction of having to go to different places for different things. you have people who might need to go on site to audit something, to review assets, to do something in the field. They're not necessarily technology experts. They're experts in the assets they're servicing. They're not experts in juggling around different apps. They're not experts in juggling around different things. They might be standing right next to a customer, and then both apps are suddenly firing two-factor authentication prompts, and you like there's just so many little bits and pieces that can get involved
Yeah.
that it just creates headaches for people who are trying to do their job. And the more headaches there are, if it's a separate piece, if you go, oh, this software from this tool, it helps us do this one thing, it helps on the mapping, or it helps on something else. If that's not working, something gets missed, it gets done, they'll skip over it on site because the pressure of I only have 1 hour or 2 hours on site and I need to make it to my next job. There's some information that you can only capture there right now. So to give an example on the floor plans, if there's a problem with something and you need to go take photos of it, well, with Locatrix in Plan Studio, you can take the photos and pin them right on the map, so you've got a photo where the issue is. So even if you don't have time to go and do everything fully right there on site, you can just take all the information you need to go, okay, we can sort it out. If you don't have an integration that lets you, take photos and mix that together, it's just a simple example. You might take a photo on your phone and now it's sitting in a photo library elsewhere, and it's not tied into the thing that you need to work with. If it's worse if you have an integration with a billing system that's not working, and then work's going uninvoiced, and then it's months down the road and you're going, wait, why do I have a cash flow problem? Oh, because I forgot to go in and do the invoice. If it's not tied straight into the system where you're actually tracking all of your work, you're missing out there. It's across the board, there's problems.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's a really good explanation, and we see that all the time. Obviously, like yourself, um, we have to give the engineers the correct tools. We have to, and the key thing we say here is you can't slow them down. You can't. Giving them all these tools is brilliant, and once they accept it, once once they get over that, this seems a little bit big brotherish or whatever it might be. As long as that tool is giving them the information they want to do that job, hopefully, first time, first time fixes are a big thing here. Um, then you'll get that positive response, and asset data for us is a great example. Again, a kind of not an afterthought as much as compliance is, because a lot of our customers that we see today embrace, you know, not the concept, but you understand what I mean, the mindset of having good data. And I think Locatrix obviously is going to give them another layer on top of this. So for us, if an engineer doesn't trust an asset record, then the engineer, what we've seen, will stop using it. They'll just literally just say, "Oh, I'm ignoring that 'cause it's out of date or it's wrong," or whatever it might be. And once that happens, obviously, as you know, everything kind of downstream suffers. More so the compliance side of things. But I want to kind of talk a little bit more around the whole asset conversation, a little bit more about you guys at Locatrix, and the partnership that we're doing to kind of give that extra lovely layer on top that we touched on at the moment. And it's where I feel with integrations and asset and compliance that specialist partners really matter. We can do what we can do. We're good at what we do, but bringing a company in like yourselves gives us that extra kind of I guess turbocharge around assets, um, especially around sort of visibility, large complex sites. This for us is one of the quickest places where things break down, sort of workflow or communication wise with the engineer. And before, Matt, we talk about the integration itself, I'd love to kind of rewind a little bit and get your historical lens, I guess. Um, what problem, I guess, at the start for you, what problem was Locatrix originally trying to solve?
So here in Australia, here in Queensland, Australia, where we are, in the early 2000s, there was a really bad fire at a backpackers, and there was a lot of people that died there in Childers. Not quite a massive building like a high-rise residential tower, but just as shocking a disaster when it happened.
Yeah.
And there's a big review into it, into the circumstances of all of that. And out of that review, there were a lot of findings around people not knowing how to get out, or people trapped when they just think of anything that a business should be doing. Just every corner was cut. I can list it off, but just every corner was cut. Exit routes were blocked. People inside didn't know how to get out. It was just very, very poorly done. And out of that, in Queensland, we have this legislation, the building safety fire building the building fire safety regulation in
Yep.
2008, and that regulation requires people to like do a number of things. They need to do the maintenance and provide records showing that they've done the maintenance. They need to put up these evacuation signs on the wall that say, "Hey, where are you? How do you get out of the building?" The plans need to be cleanly oriented. That you can't just take an image of a floor plan and flip it upside down because now it's not readable. You've got to, up needs to be up, left needs to be left, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
provide training to the occupants of that building. If they're in it for more than a certain amount of time in a month, they need to be shown what to do, how to get out, how to use the equipment that's around them. It's one thing to have a bunch of fire safety equipment in a building, but if people don't feel confident to go and use it, then they won't. You don't want someone
Of
on
course.
fire in a kitchen and no one grabs the fire blanket out and goes to help them out. You need to know how to use all of this stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so all of that became all the requirements to train staff to have these floor plans became law in Queensland in 2008. And Locatrix was founded essentially to provide compliance with that legislation. And so we provided evacuation signs, we provided fire safety training, and we did it in a fairly novel way. Rather than get everyone in the room and essentially give them a lecture on the fire safety training, we brought that online because the legislation requirement is that everyone needs to be trained. And if you think about it now, with the rise of work from home, it's pretty difficult to get everyone who works in a building at the same place at the same time. People might be sick, they might be on leave, they might be not on their roster day on. There's about a zillion different reasons why they might not be there.
Of
And
course.
so Locatrix went, well, we can provide training online and we can use floor plans to help personalize that. So instead of just saying, okay, this company, they might have a few offices, they might have some warehouses, different safety equipment in each, different training requirements. You don't just want to give every single person in the organization the exact same training. You don't want to give someone who works in the reception of an office the exact same training that you might give someone who's working in a warehouse. It's completely
Mm.
different environments.
Yeah.
And that can be hard to do online. But if you have a floor plan, if you have a map of the facility and you know what the assets are and where they are, well, you can say, well, if you work in this level of a building, we know that this is the equipment that's relevant to you. And so we can provide site specific training, which is required in the law. You need to know the requirements for the places where you work. You can't just have something that's generalized. And so we can use the floor plans to help do it online. And those same floor plans we can help put on the evacuation signs. And that's I guess, the early days of Locatrix, where we would
Yeah.
provide this directly to customers. And then we had a real shift for us came in 20, for us, it started in 2017, but didn't really, the rest of the world didn't see it until 2020 when we launched Plan Studio. The process of creating these evacuation signs, it's pretty slow and tedious. So for context, a airport that we worked on would take about 5 days to go produce all the evacuation signs, QA check them, make sure that everything was correct, all the paths they were showing were correct, make sure that all the icons were showing the right way, the text was readable. There's about a zillion different little things that you've got to review for these signs.
Yeah.
And we'd have to produce those using graphic design software for print. And then we'd have a completely separate version of that floor plan for the interactive online training. There was very little sharing between the two. So that's where a lot of my early contributions to the company came in creating Plan Studio, because we went, there's not really a tool out there that lets us create a floor plan to help produce these evacuation signs and to help make it interactive. So we essentially had to go build that ourselves. We went and built this tool to go solve our own problem. And we took I mentioned that airport that took about 5 days to do the signs for. With Plan Studio, we were doing it in a day. And so we realized for ourselves, like, oh my gosh, we can be about 5 times more productive for this kind of work. And then there are even just little benefits, like you don't have to go on site with a large piece of paper, because a lot of tools let you say annotate a floor plan, like a PDF or something like that. They'll limit how far you can zoom in. So someone sends you a floor plan of an airport and you go to zoom in to go take notes. and you can't write on it properly. You can't zoom in properly. So you end up having to take these huge pieces of paper on site to take all of the detail. So something as simple as pinch to zoom that just lets you keep zooming and zooming and zooming and doesn't let you stop turned out to be a really major thing.
I'm imagining that engineers with rolled up pieces of like A0 under their arms.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh,
massive.
it was. And so then it's like you're in the Stone Age again because you're having to someone goes out on site, but then they have to fly the stuff home or put it in the mail and send it through just for you to get the information. So there were a whole bunch of little changes with Plan Studio that just it made everything so much more productive, a lot more automation along the way to produce these signs and just a instant export for the interactive training.
Yeah,
And we realized this is too good to keep to ourselves. And we realized that there is a whole industry of fire safety professionals out there in Australia and in the world with the exact same problems that we were facing. And
yeah.
that's where we made a pretty big change for us to start selling Plan Studio, start selling the floor plan creation software, start going down the path of not standing on our own and start to create partnerships, start to work with other people, start to work with others in the fire safety industry to make things better.
That's a really good point, actually. I guess if we can kind of, I love the explanation of doing it for yourself, which thanks for explaining because myself I wasn't sure when that kind of bump came, so it's really interesting to hear. And of course, in 2020 we hit obviously world shutdown and all that sort of stuff, so amplifying everything for that lived online that get kind of like people realized how important this was, I guess.
Suddenly here in Australia, everyone started to care about how many square meters they had in a certain part of a room to go, how many people can be in there? Boy, was it useful to have a geospatially accurate floor plan when suddenly you had to care about square meters and getting that correct when you never had
Yeah,
a reason to before.
absolutely. I guess from I guess the other side of the coin as well with your asset kind of mapping side of things along equally, obviously as important here as the compliance side and the safety evacuation side of things. You've got obviously you lean into the asset environments as well, and I guess it'd be interesting to understand what your take on when does asset location intelligence sort of stop being a nice to have and become critical? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around that as well.
There's, I guess there's two parts to that. One is, I guess, the simple answer, which is when it becomes law. So here in Australia, knowing the location of the assets, again, I'll go to my prop here, but the evacuation sign isn't just a floor plan that says, here's where you are and here's how you get out of the building.
No.
It's got all of the icons saying there's an extinguisher there, there's a switchboard there, there's fire safety equipment there, there's a first aid kit there.
Yeah,
Part of the mapping that's required, and it's also a requirement in any build and anyone who has to any high-rise residential buildings who are providing floor plans. It's not just where are the walls and doors; it's where's all the stuff on the building.
yeah,
So asset mapping for us wasn't just something that we looked at and went, "Oh, that was interesting." It actually started because of the requirements for evac signs. Requirements for compliance in one area often help you do something else, and so that's where it becomes really critical. Is if you need to produce these floor plans, you don't want to deal with duplicating them out and going, okay, well, we'll run everything out of one system, but now there's this new requirement for providing things to the authorities. So we've got to go draw up another copy of floor plans and add that on. You just want one living master.
yeah,
So that's I guess the easy answer is when it becomes law, but also just practically, if you want to scale a business, you can't do things the same way all the time. You can't guarantee that the same technician's always going to go out to the same building each time something needs to happen. If you're a growing business, you've got more and more people in the mix, more technicians, more engineers going out on site. And it becomes hard to guarantee that you're going to have the local knowledge, the I guess the intuition that comes from just going to the same place every single time. There's a much stronger chance that you're sending someone on site and it might be their first time going there. And so if you want to provide that same, I guess, level of service that you would have been providing in your early days as a smaller business when it might have been even just the founder going on out on site every time. If you want to start to scale up, hire out staff and make sure they know where everything is as much as you do, you've really got to move from having just individual people to having systems that empower them so that you can go, well, I can go on site and be prepared with a floor plan and go, I know exactly where everything is. and I've never been here before. I didn't have to sit down and learn things or memorize it, or I didn't have to go find the person who'd been out there before to say, oh yeah, look, when you go out there, make sure you go through this door because the keypad's working there and you need to talk to this office manager and do this. And oh, don't go on a Friday because the office manager who can let you in is working from home. Like all that stuff, you
Yeah,
can't scale if it's in here. You need it in a system. You need the locations of things on a system. Even
absolutely.
little details like knowing, okay, you might have a list of assets to go, okay, I need to service this one, service this one. The simple win is being able to find the thing quicker.
Yeah,
That's the convenience version. But then when it almost becomes mandatory is when the thing isn't there. If you've got a list of 5 assets and you've walked around and you've found 4, well, for that 5th asset that you haven't found yet, was it, say, a fire extinguisher that's actually been used and has been discarded and isn't present? Was it something that's been moved? Is there been a change? If you don't know where to look, you're going to either waste time just scouring the building trying to find the 5th one before you can conclude, yep, it's not there, that's a defect, that's a problem. If you've got a floor plan and you know, oh, that asset should be here, the moment you go to that location, if the asset's there, cool, you found it quickly. But if it's not there, you instantly know, yep, there's a problem and you can move on. Take something that
yeah,
should be a 5-minute job. If you don't have a map to make that conclusion, you might be walking around that building for ages trying to find it. And so you end
absolutely.
up losing out on, you either have to make the choice to run slower or skip compliance, miss assets, do things wrong. And you don't want people to be forced to make the choice between safety or efficiency. You want both. That's when it becomes critical to stop any corner being cut and make it as easy as possible for everyone to know, oh yep, that's missing. We'll note that down.
Yeah,
An asset system can tell you everything about the assets that it knows about, but it can't really help you for the assets that aren't entered into it. That's where a floor plan in our case really helps because you have that canvas of saying something should be here and it's not, or actually there was something here kind of surprisingly and we didn't expect it. You can actually note that down on the floor plan. You have that flexibility to work with it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. What I liked about it when I first saw it, and I was explaining to my brother who's in the industries. Um, it's the fact that when you go onto a multi-asset site and you have this, obviously they use the Joblogic app, and obviously as we're talking about this partnership is the integration between Locatrix and Joblogic. So Locatrix is available inside the app. It shows you where all your assets are inside that site. But for me, the big first point was that when you walked up to a, you know, one of 5 commercial boilers on a huge site, you're in front of the right one. You the asset details match the boiler that it says you're here, so you should be looking at, XYZ1, and if you're there and you're looking at XYZ3, then you've got a problem. What's happened there? So for me, the fact that, we hear horror stories in the UK of the wrong asset being serviced, the wrong asset being worse, decommissioned, the wrong addresses going to, all that sort of stuff. So for me, that first kind of major tick in the box about the partnership with Locatrix was, yeah, I can see that I'm in the right place in front of the right asset, which sounds so obvious, right? But yeah, that was a good point for me. Um,
Yeah, it's it's almost hard to imagine coming from a world where I'm seeing floor plans every day. It's hard to imagine choosing not to work that way, choosing to go, yeah, I'll just go with a spreadsheet and hope for the best. Like, would you go with that to try and drive home? We got rid of printed turn by turn directions 25, 26 years ago and replaced it with
right,
maps.
exactly. Great
We do it
comparison.
everywhere else in our day. When was the last time you used a spreadsheet to do that kind of important thing around travel? No, you use a map. That's how you do it. It's how we've always done it in the outside world. It should be that easy inside.
Exactly. Um, the value as well, for Locatrix for me, just while we can't, I guess, while we wrap around that kind of part of the conversation, was this being a truly operational addition, if you like, um, and not just the value. I guess what I'm trying to say is the value comes from it being connected into the operational workflow, which is what we talk about a lot at JobLogic, is having these workflows. If they're right, best practice inside that workflow, then you're going to get not many problems, if you see what I mean. And I know we touched on it before, but this kind of integration means that Locatrix isn't a siloed system. So it's not that you're inside this app and you go, oh, okay, I've got to minimize that. I've got to bring up this. I've got to log into this, use my 2FA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's that truly kind of integrated and connected into that operational workflow, so to speak. So I guess we kind of turn this to a more practical view and forget the tech for the moment, I guess, and think about our real customers, which of course are watching this session. For a lot of UK service businesses, compliance, it doesn't fail because engineers don't do their work. Okay, it fails because, as we spoke about already, Matt, the evidence is weak, it's scattered, and it's impossible to kind of piece together. As you said, months later, you can't have these siloed systems and then start piecing all this kind of history together, all this information together. Um, so, what does the engineer experience differently on site once they kind of um, have that locatrix supercharge, as I called it earlier on?
The first and most obvious thing that you experience on site is if you need to go and find a specific asset, you can just go exactly there. You don't have to wait. You don't have to try and find someone on site who knows about all those details, because quite often the engineer on site's been organized to go out there by an office manager. They might not be on site during the visit, and then everyone else on site's going, okay, well, just sign in there and off you go. And then, okay, where is everything? How do I find it? I've got a list of things I need to go and do, but where is it? So that's the most instant thing that you'll notice, is just being able to see things inside and go, oh, that's where I need to go, and you can just go straight there. Or
Yeah,
being able to say, look, I'm in this end of the building. I'm here at like a large hospital, a very large aged care facility. I do not want to work top to bottom from this list, because if I do, I'm walking back and forth all over the place. What I want to do is I want to hit on this wing of the building, this section first, touch every asset there, and then move on knowing that I've hit everything with the confidence I don't have to go back. So when you've got a floor plan, you can see there's 5 pins there on the floor plan, and you can say, oh yeah, that pin's for asset 1, 2, 3, that's for this one. You can just go and deal with those assets straight away, and then have the confidence to move on and not feel like you've missed anything. So you can move through a space far more efficiently.
yeah, and I think you
That's the first one that you
yeah,
notice.
absolutely. I think you two great points there that I think just for the people watching, I wanted to add something to. You said that what they can see, for me, the visual aspect of Locatrix over mapped over Joblogic is beautiful when you actually see it. You know, it's such a kind of like that revelation moment where you think, oh my God, I can now, like you said, walk in, sign in. Do you need any help? No. I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly what I'm working on. It gives you that visual aspect. Okay, we give them, obviously, if the data inside JobLogic is only as good as the customer puts in, and we hammer that message from the very moment they sign up with us. You know, you've got to have this lovely data that tells your engineers exactly what you want, tells Mr. Auditor what's actually happened on what asset where and so on. So locations and all that sort of stuff is in there, but that visuality, that kind of overlaying map is brilliant. Um, so the second point that I kind of wanted to touch on with you is, what do you see the office teams benefiting from? Because we understand what we've done for the engineer, but from your perspective, with the office teams kind of working with the job logic system and the locatrix system, what kind of benefits do they notice first, I guess?
So the things that office teams would notice is, on the Locatrix side, it's the ability to ask questions and get reports that might require on-site visit, or require going through a bunch of stuff manually, that you can start to automate certain checks. Even simple things like how many. I mentioned this one before, but because it was an example we had for a large company in Australia, of knowing how many facilities do we have that only have a single evacuation point. That doesn't translate that well into an asset system because evacuation paths aren't, it's not a physical object that needs to be asset or serviced. It's more of a procedure. It's a thing that you can visualize on a map, but it's not really a thing that you can always tag in an asset management system. And so being able to actually visualize and see that, that's something that saves having to send someone on site because you can do that, what might have been an on-site check or even, say a call to a customer or someone to get boots on the ground and check it. You can do that as a desktop audit. So the biggest change, I guess, to summarize that for an office team is that you have the chance for certain things that would previously require an on-site visit to become a desktop audit, and you can get the same outcome just as easily.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's that ability to give them that additional information, that additional overlay again, and you know, stop what was maybe 2, 3 years ago had to be someone to go and visit, to check, to do the audit, whatever. It's now in front of them, and they can click round like we said earlier. So yeah, it really does add a huge benefit to the office as well as what we would call the boots on the ground, so to speak. Um, I guess my last question around this sort of point is on regulated. I know we've spoken about the disaster in Australia with the backpackers. Obviously, we've mentioned the Grenfell episode as well. On what is now regulated or high risk sites, how often is the real challenge proving what happened rather than doing the work itself? So does that kind of make sense, that question?
Yeah. So, and here in Australia, our experience with the laws that require you to do training, do all that kind of stuff, the building fire safety regulation I referred to, they also include a requirement to be able to produce all this information on demand. And if you can't, the fire department can just shut your business down. So that does happen where, okay, you're shut down until you can produce this information. So it is interesting to talk about because some businesses will go, well, we haven't been audited in a while, but it's kind of like saying, well, I don't need to service my car. What's the risk of a car crash actually happening?
Yeah,
I'm sure the brakes and the airbags will be fine.
yeah,
The part of the challenge is even if you don't need to do it frequently, when you wish you had that audit, when you wish you'd done it right in the first place, in the context of asset and particularly in our world of safety, it's not, oh, we might fail this audit. It's, oh, someone's died and the coroner's involved. There's lawsuits involved. There's people going, did you do all the right steps? Have you taken all the right steps to make sure things have been done properly? The person that you're providing this asset service to, they're under the pump to go, something terrible has happened on our facility. Has everything been done properly? Have the contractors we brought out done everything properly? So it isn't always about the frequency, but it's about the severity. If you need to prove that you've done the right things with assets, especially in those regulated fields, if you can't, it's a it's a very bad time. You'll be sitting on the wrong side of a courtroom if that's happening. So
yeah, absolutely. That's the same here as well. And like I said to you earlier, it's why we are when we train, when we educate our customers, we are so kind of driven around the compliance side of things, because of the very reasons that you spoke about there. And unfortunately, in the UK, not so much now, but only going back sort of 5, 6, 7 years, it compliance was again such an afterthought. It was just, I'll check my tires on my car. The analogy you used, I'll check them next week or the week after, and then you end up not checking them, and obviously they don't work properly and something happens, which again, like you said, you'll be sat on the wrong side of the courtroom then. So I guess, Matt, for me, what we hear with the kind of locatrix integration from our customers is kind of less wasted time, fewer assumptions on site, of course, better evidence, which we've spoken about, more confidence in their decisions as well, and that confidence matters operationally. It really matters when questions are asked later, as you alluded to earlier. So I guess it's why when we kind of talk about integrations and partnerships at Joblogic, it's why we're so deliberate about them. We bring them in for specific. functions or specific gaps or specific um, areas that we want to solve, or obviously improve in the light of compliance and safety and stuff like that. The goal, though, that we're always conscious about isn't more software. We want fewer workarounds. That's what we're looking for. Um, we don't try to be everything, as I know you guys don't. And there's obviously there's people out there like yourselves and other partners that we deal with, sort of accounts and CRM systems and security systems, all those sorts of things. They do what they do and they do it best. So why would we want to try and do all that when we could just simply have a nice slick integration? Um, we kind of focus, I guess, on the operational core. That's our focus. And then, as I said, we partner where depth matters. And Locatrix, as I said, I keep talking about this layer that it gives to us. But I guess a better explanation would have been it gives us more depth around that asset, around that layout, the building, the floor plans, the safety, everything. Um, and that's what they do, right? Good integrations remove friction, which is what we've spoken about. They reduce that mental load on people, and as you've pointed out, they let you scale without relying on heroics, without relying on that single point of failure, that person that seems to know everything, holds it up here, as you said, that kind of memory. um and as I alluded to a minute ago, there's a lot of businesses out there embracing integrations and technologies to keep their business moving. Things like accounting platforms like Sage and Zero, as I said, CRM tools, asset and compliance systems, planning tools. And the point is, it's never whether these tools are big names or best in class or the most expensive. The point is whether they're connected in a way that supports how people actually work rather than forcing teams to constantly bridge the gaps themselves. So, I guess, coming back to you, Matt, and just to get your kind of opinion on the bigger sort of integration picture, what do you think businesses underestimate most when they delay integrating systems?
Probably how much they're missing out on working with the experts. How if you want to work with talk about invoicing, do you want to issue everything yourself, or do you just want to have Zero go do it for you, sum up everything, payroll, everything sorted, done? You're not doing that yourself. You want something else to do it. One, it's easier. Then two, and two, it's not going to get it wrong. Um, and so that's like for us, we see ourselves as that we like to say we're the experts in the where. You guys bring the expertise in the who, the what, the when, the all the other things around it. We to us like that's where the magic is in that partnership, like, as you said, of having having the best of each world. But where it needs to get to, where you need things to be, is to have it work together well. You don't want to sit down and use a you don't want to use a series of integrations just like you've been using a series of apps in your start menu on Windows 95. You want to get it to a place where it feels tightly coupled together. It feels like it's one experience. Someone who's on site who isn't part of the office team, who isn't part of the people who've decided, oh, this Locatrix integration looks good, we can solve the mapping piece. Well, this Zero integration looks good. It's great when the people in the office teams who were setting it all up are going, yep, that's great, we'll get it going. But you want the people in the field to just go and do the hard part of the job, which is to do their job. You don't want them to have to fight the technology. You don't want to have them worry about that kind of thing. So that's where that's the where you want the integrations to be. And when I think a lot of businesses see they'll see some integrations or see what it's been like in the past to try and get things working together and go, oh, it's been a pain, let's just not bother. And they miss out on how easy it's becoming to do these things, how easy, whether it's Joblogic with your marketplace, or there's just in general other tools that integrate well together. It's just becoming easier and easier and easier to have it work and to integrate with tools that get better and better and better over time. The version of the Locatrix integration that we've got now is great, but it's going to be better over time. It's That's what we've been saying to our customers here in Australia who've been working with us for other things. It keeps getting better. What started as we can provide fire safety training for what to an emergency is turning into, and now we can also give emergency services the exact same bit of information. They call it a common operating picture. Um, it's the data that's being integrated into retail systems. So all for wayfinding, as the example I gave for the storage customer. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of businesses, it can be easy to be jaded by bad integrations and to not and to use that as a reason to not to pursue the good ones. And I think that's where you miss out because there's some great integrations being built. Like when you talk about Zero on your end, we all of our customers behind the scenes, we're using Zero to manage all of our billing. We're hooking data into Power BI, we're linking it into Dynamics. Like none of the teams in our finance or sales team want to worry about integrations breaking. They just want to go and solve the problems. They've got their jobs are hard enough as it is. They just want the tools to work. And
Absolutely.
we have that experience on our end. So we try and make sure the integrations that we can build and support for other people are living up to that same standard of it should just be easy to do your job.
So thanks for that, Matt. So for those of you guys that are watching and listening to this webinar, this session, with Matt, if there's one takeaway today, it's for me, it's this: integrations aren't about technology; they're about flow, trust, and confidence. When your systems are connected properly, operations will run smoother, compliance becomes calmer, more evident, and businesses can grow without constantly firefighting, which is what Matt alluded to before with his scaling comment. And that's where good partnerships will really earn their keep from both ends. If this conversation has made you question where things slow down, or if you feel fragile in your own business, then that's the right place to start. And I guess my last sort of question for Matt is, do you have any sort of final thoughts on where connected asset intelligence and partnerships like ours are heading in the future?
Yeah, they're headed to a much easier world to do things with. A world where you're not having to worry about separate systems, where it feels like it's one thing. You get the benefits of being able to see where things are, the benefits of being able to invoice your customers, the benefits of having all of that work together without the friction of feeling like you're just running five separate apps on a computer. Like it should feel like it's one integrated experience and work together for you. It shouldn't be a thing that you get forced to do. It should be a thing that you want to do because the people around you are doing it and their lives are getting easier and you want your life to be easy. You want to do your job well. So that's that's the main thing for me. It just needs to be so much easier to do things.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
that's where we're going.
Absolutely. I can't agree more, to be honest. And I guess this is a kind of nice point to wrap this up now. And obviously, Matt, want to thank you for your time and joining us so early. Well, no, so late for you, so early for us. But yeah, I guess for the guys um, watching and listening to this session, we would obviously like you and we welcome you to sort of carry on this conversation with us that myself and Matt have obviously just been talking about. We'd like you to reach out, your CSM, your account manager, about this sort of integration conversation and talk to us about the partnerships and so on. Now, this isn't about features. That's not what I'm saying. But this is more about where work gets harder than it needs to be. As Matt said, why, it should feel like this fluid one system thing that you're using, not having to jump in and out of five. I think you referenced Windows 95, which made me smile because my age, I guess. But it should be this one fluid system. And we want you to talk to us about the options we have around integrations and kind of making it more streamlined and making it more efficient for you. But listen again, Matt, thanks for joining us today. And thank you for your time. And for everyone listening and watching this session, also, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us. And we will see you on the next one. Take care.